Hello and welcome to our Employee Survey Success webinar. I'm very excited to have you with us today. My name is Melissa and I'm our success enthusiast here at SoGoSurvey, which means I am well matched for the topic of employee survey success. I work on trainings, videos, website, all kinds of other content here as well to make sure that you're getting the most out of your SoGoSurvey account. And if you don't have an account, that you might be interested in signing up for one soon. So our big picture today is in two parts. One is starting with the big picture of human resources, some general tips, things to think about as you're getting started in planning or executing your first survey, or one of many surveys that you've been doing. And the second part is a little bit of more tech talk. We'll get started by looking into the platform on what it takes to get started just from scratch or from the survey bank, for example, and some tips to get you moving along the process of your employee surveys. So to get started with, we are very sympathetic, as you can see from our image. All of these are the office-related GIFs you'll be seeing today. We know that anytime that you're dealing with lots of people, budget concerns, conflicting priorities, human resources can be a really very challenging area to work in. And whether this is your primary job or something that you're just helping out with, we're very, very sympathetic to the challenges that you're facing in the area of human resources, and we're doing our best to support you. So if we can stay calm, we'll do our best to get you through. So one of our first tips is to start with timing. Timing really is everything in so many aspects of our lives. And with surveying, with employee engagement in general, we know that making sure that there's a good reason why you're doing everything in the first place and why you're doing it right now, and something that you've thought about. So having a strategic plan for your engagement with your employees really does make sense, whether it's an annual calendar or if it's trigger-based, based on certain things. When you're looking at that kind of a plan, it really makes a big difference to have a strategic approach to, for example, when an employee starts, it makes sense, or when an employee leaves, or if there's professional development that's going on. There's usually a good reason why a survey should be taking place at a certain time. So when you do make that plan, really get specific with what you have in mind. Which groups are you reaching out to? What time exactly do you think you're going to reach out to them? Is it a certain day, a certain month? And be sensitive to the calendar that you have as an organization as well. So timing really does make a big difference, and we strongly recommend having that strategic plan. It's something that you can build right in the platform if you like. We have the plan calendar under utilities as well, but it's something that you just definitely need to discuss with your entire organization. The next tip to take a look at is, in employee surveys especially, anonymity is a really great feature to start with, especially in the area of employee surveys. We know that people can feel sometimes a little bit uncertain about who's going to see their feedback, how honest they should be, how candid they should be in their responses. And we know for a fact that it's in their best interest and in your best interest that that feedback gets to the right people. You do have the ability, though, if you're thinking that your participants are not going to be 100% satisfied, that you're going to treat their responses confidentially, you can set up technical anonymity. So that means that there's absolutely no way that you can connect a participant with their response. So totally protected. If you have employees who are already suspicious, you want to make sure that you put their mind at ease. And if not too, it's just a really great way to ensure that you have more feedback and more candid feedback. It makes it a lot more useful for you. Another piece here is communication. We love our platform, of course. We think that there are a lot of good pieces in there, all the way from email invitations to the survey itself to follow-up messages. But really think about the strategic ways that you communicate with your team already. So if that means that you have an employee newsletter or you have regular letters or emails that go out from your CEO or other leaders, really take advantage of those existing communication strategies so that it's integrated with the rest of your messaging. The invitation is coming from somebody important enough that they'll recognize the name. And if you have a really large organization, sometimes it helps to let people know, what that person's title is, for example. So whether it's being sent from you directly or you're speaking on behalf of someone in the organization, that invitation is a really important process, not just the email invitation from the platform, but also just the entire sort of culture of communication to make sure that people know that their points are really valued by the organization and that you really want to hear their feedback. So communicating up front, sending really good quality invitations that prioritize, their time, make the most of it, and identify how that information is going to be used. And then also reminders. The reminders, again, just like I've been saying, it's a little bit of how it works in the platform. That's very helpful to have our intelligent reminders system built in there, so you can send reminders to people who have not yet responded to their invitations. But it's also part of your culture as well. So people in staff meetings or people on those one-off emails or the same ongoing strategic communication newsletters, weekly emails, etc., that those reminders of that importance of that survey are communicated across all of those channels as well. People do want to be helpful, and if they think that their voice is going to be valued, they are more likely to respond. One more here, the idea that we do want to hear from everyone. A couple different ways to think about this. One, of course, is we want to make sure that each person really does have a voice. Each person really does have the opportunity to share feedback. And you know what? Maybe some surveys are just for managers, or some surveys are just for members of a specific department, for example. But really making sure that everyone throughout the course of the year has an opportunity to share their feedback really does make a difference. Even if you see somebody from a different department is participating, but you haven't been invited, knowing that there is a plan to collect your feedback can be really valuable. So that one person, one response, there are a couple different ways to do that. One within the platform is through single-use links within email invitations. It's a really great way to ensure that you aren't having multiple participants from a specific survey, so that you are hearing one time from each person. So something to consider there. You can also set those restrictions on shareable URLs, but in most cases you're probably, with your employees, you have their email addresses, and you're probably going to be writing directly to them. So recommending using a single-use link. Another thing to consider in opening up to that wider audience, sort of your virtual open door policy, is consider that if you have a large organization, which there are people who rely on multiple different languages, we do have the ability to set up multilingual surveys. So if you really want people to participate, you really do need to make that effort to make sure that all of your surveys match the same style as all of the rest of your communication. So if you send out employee newsletters in English and in Russian, your survey should also be going out in English and in Russian. So make sure that you're truly making a genuine effort to reach out to everyone. It makes it a lot more simple when you see that's built right into the platform, a few clicks, and you're able to have that translation ready. But really do have that open door policy extend to your surveys as well. And one last high-level tip before we get into a quick technical overview, and that is follow-up. So if it's sort of that high five of thank you so much for participating that you can see in a thank you message or in a follow-up email, something like that, we call it instant thanks. It's a really, really valuable way to say, hey, thanks, we really appreciate that. Because in real time, that's when we know that we sort of want that pat on the head or pat on the shoulder to have that encouragement. That when people have that positive experience with your survey, even just as they finished it, they're more likely to participate the next time. So beyond that instant thanks, there might be some immediate follow-up that you're doing based on some rules and alerts that you've set up on your end. So if somebody says, they're really unhappy at work, for example, you do have the ability to follow up with them immediately. But in general, in sort of the big picture, making sure that you do report out on your results. People remember that they took the survey, and they're going to want to know what happened with the results. And not only what happened with the results, but what happened as a result of that data. So just saying that, a lot of people are happy at work, it turns out, it's not a very genuine way to share out the data. If it's an overall score, or if you choose to just highlight specific findings, that's totally fine. People don't need to know every single detail, and maybe it's shared with departments specifically based on the feedback that you're collecting. But the idea that those results are shared out will help you a lot in your future participation. So when the next time you send out that survey, you've got that strategic plan. So probably next year you're going to be doing the same exact survey. That people will have that association with, last time I gave feedback, and then it was used. So making sure that they have that in their memory, that something actually happened with this data. It wasn't just an empty exercise. So communicating the key takeaways, whether that's back in those strategic communication channels as well, weekly emails from the boss or employee newsletters on every month, something like that. Even sharing out in team and department meetings, making sure that people recognize, what we've learned and what we're going to do as a result of it. So some of these are, kind of obvious points, but as you're starting to make your plans for employee surveys, a lot of these are going to go a long way toward making a big difference. So I want to pause here. I want to remind you, too, if you have any questions, please do feel free to send them to me in the chat feature at the top of the screen. You have a little bubble up there so you can share some feedback or questions with me as we go. I will pause again at the end, but I just wanted to pause here because we're moving from the high-level comments to some quick start suggestions within the platform. So as we do move over there, please feel free to ping me with any questions that you might have. So in the interest of getting started very quickly, we're going to take a look at an example, pulling an example of an employee survey from our pre-built survey bank, doing some customization of the content that will be most useful for you. Even pre-filling some of that data is a really great way because these are your employees. You probably know a lot about them already. Obviously, the visual matters, and then getting farther down into the distribution process. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to our platform so we can take a look at what this would look like. Say that you are starting from scratch. Perhaps you've just been tasked with the opportunity, we'll call it, of sending out an employee survey. And so the first thing that might draw your attention is coming to create a survey. You could go straight to the survey bank if you like, if you're just browsing. But if you're ready to get started, you have a few options here. Of course, if you already know what you need to ask, you can go ahead and get started with the blank survey and build from there. But just for today, we'll choose something from our survey bank. As you scroll through the content in our survey bank, you see we have a lot of options. Because we're talking about employees today, I'll just go straight to HR surveys. So in each of these surveys, you've got a good descriptor of what it looks like, how long it is, anything like this. So I might go with the, let's say, employee job satisfaction survey. I can preview it if I'd like over here, but I'm pretty sure this is the kind of survey that I've been asked to do. So please do make sure you give a title, and if you call it Employee Satisfaction Survey, you might want to make sure that this is for example, the 2017 version, anything like that. Again, you do have the option to include multiple different languages later if you like, so you don't have to do that right now, but of course the primary language has already been selected because it's built into our survey bank. So you go ahead and start your survey, and luckily for you, starting your survey is not a blank slate in this case, because you've started with content from the survey bank. You have a really nice looking survey that's already ready and waiting for you. So you can even preview that if you'd like to right away. You can scroll through if you haven't already looked at it. You've got a quick view of what that survey looks like from top to bottom. Again, it's pretty nice to be able to start with something instead of starting with nothing. So you might then think, oh, this is the perfect thing, and move on with your life. But in most cases, you're probably going to be doing a little bit of customization. So you might see, for example, at the very top, a survey logo. Of course, we don't necessarily know what logo you'd like, so we don't have it built in. But it's a really important idea to have a logo in your survey there at the top. It could be a specific image associated with a certain department, or it could be the company logo as a whole. I already have loaded my logo into my account, so I can consistently use my, probably not surprising, SoGoSurvey logo over and again. I'm going to hit save there, but if you had to upload the file directly or if it was a new logo, you can upload that as well. Another point of customization here is having a title. This is in the survey header. So you could call this, again, Employee Satisfaction Survey, and you might just call it Employee Satisfaction Survey here, so that, remember that the title that you're looking at up here is just within the platform. So you can call this whatever you'd like it to be on the sort of employee-facing front versus internally, your reference notes. I'm going to make mine a little bit bigger there. I might change the colors. I might change some of the items here. But one of the other things to think about, of course, is you'll see right away the survey asks questions about your experience working for the company. So I'm pretty sure that I want to be a little bit more specific than that. So a good tip is to use something like find and replace. So you can use find and replace up here If you'd like to make updates from the company, for example, to the name of your company, that's a really great way to do it. And if you just see one or two little things that you'd like to go in and change like this, you can also just come in and edit it. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Basically what you're doing then is reviewing the content, making sure that everything that you have in here, everything that we've built in here, you'd like to include. If you decide there's something that's in here that you don't want to include, for example, you might say, I want to delete this question or I want to edit this question. Any of these, of course, that you can remove. We have a lot of good suggestions in here, but of course you want something that's perfect for you and for your team. So find and replace, customizing the content, really important. And you also might want to start thinking about what are the things that you absolutely must know in order to make this survey valuable. So you might have something in here, a demographic question, for example, or which department do you work for? And so if you've added in a survey, I've added in a question here, and just double check we don't have any demographic questions that have been added in yet. Here, actually, we do have them at the end. So in which department do you work? You might find that some of these questions are a little bit strange to ask your employees directly because you already know what department they work or you already know the name of their position or their location. So consider pre-filling some of that data. So if you already know, for example, the department where somebody works, you have the ability under, we'll call it more here, data population. You can set data population here on each of these questions that you already know the data for, and that will pre-fill the content from a spreadsheet that you upload in distribution. So if I say pre-hidden, I will be able to pre-fill this information when I send out those email invitations, and I'll be able to use it in my reporting. So think about what you want in that reporting, of course. If you want to know, what does the communications department think? What does the marketing department think? What does the research department think? You can divide your data based on any of the questions that you have in here. But again, it's a little bit silly to ask people, it's like saying, my favorite example here is to say, Melissa, what's your name? Like, of course you know my name. You've already put it in the question. So if I'm an employee in your organization, you probably already know what department I go in. So save people time. Don't insult them by asking questions that are unnecessary. And you're even shortening your survey by hiding this as well. Okay. So a lot of good pieces here in terms of the content, things that we could change to customize this survey. Again, this is a very, very short survey. It's just one page here, but you want to make sure that that one page is worthwhile, that the content is really meeting your needs. The other thing that I mentioned too about customizing your survey is taking a look at the visual settings to make sure that everything that you have is going to match that logo. Everything that you're doing is going to be attractive and appealing as well. And you can do that by using one of many templates that we have built in, changing up the color scheme if you want. At any time, of course, you can just switch it up. I like this one. This one's pretty exciting. So not a distracting background. In this case, probably not a good choice. You can't even see your logo. So try not to include a background that's going to be distracting, but something that's going to be appealing and help with accessibility. You can also change a number of other items here, including the width, everything about the text, its format, its font, colors, their transparency for each of the specific items, and even the background as well. And again, I'll caution you not to get too carried away. It's easy to, you can certainly save at any time here, but it is certainly possible that if you get a little bit too carried away, you might end up with something that makes your survey either impossible to read or it's just extremely distracting and has nothing to do with the content. So make sure that you're choosing something that's focused, that's relevant, and that helps with clarity. But of course, looks do matter, so having an attractive looking survey is a really good way to go. Once you're ready with everything, do preview your survey. You can of course preview any of the customization here for web and mobile, but in the big picture preview, I am satisfied with how this looks. It works for me. Let's imagine that I've already made all of the updates that I wanted just to be efficient here. I'm going to move on to the next stage. So after design, I'm moving to distribution. So of course, in the very short picture, a lot of options that we have in terms of publishing may or may not make sense for your survey. So publishing your survey, you do have a number of different options. And as I mentioned earlier, it's probably a great choice to be able to send invitations to your employees directly via email because they are your employees, because you do have their email addresses. The single-use link is a really great way to go. If there is something that you have that's a little bit more public-facing, social media, your website is fine. If you do have an intranet that you use with your employees to connect to them, you'd like to embed a form there. Maybe there are a lot of different sort of requests that you're processing, anything like that. Publishing that on an internal website, perfect. Of course, other types of surveys might make more sense on your public-facing website, but not a problem to have that internally only. If you do also want to connect with only your employees, and for example, they don't have email addresses, but they do have something like employee IDs, you can send out your survey, put it on a public link, and limit access to that survey through survey passwords. So this is, again, it could be an employee ID or some other unique identifier that they'll use to enter on that landing page, and it'll grant them access. So it's sort of public looking, but other people who don't have that password won't be able to get in. So certainly SMS invitations, but again, I'm going to strongly encourage the use of that single-use email. That's a very nice looking option, and it gives you a number of features and benefits, such as using pre-population, as we've already discussed, being able to track, being able to send reminders, so that ongoing communication is really supported by that single-use link. So as you are choosing to send an email, you want to decide what that email looks like. And of course, this comes back again to the visual itself. So ideally, you're spending a little bit of time here to decide what you'd like to have appear on that survey. So let's say, maybe I'm going to select this version of it, this yellow jacket. I could select it or I could edit it. In this case, if you've already built it, probably you're selecting it. But if you haven't already built it, please do take a little bit of time to edit it. So editing here means taking a look at the important thing here, the subject line. So a little bit of a quick note there. Of course, the subject line is extremely important. If people do not find that your subject line is valuable, they're not going to open your invitation and they're not going to open your survey. So trying to include something that's as meaningful for them, relevant, a call to action, all of these things that we talked about earlier with communication, letting people know why their voice is valued, how you're going to use the data, how long it's going to take for them to participate. All of that quality of content really makes a big difference in them deciding whether they're going to participate or not. So again, back to the visual appeal as well. You want to make sure that this is going to match your survey as well. So if I use one template, I want a matching template for my email so that people have that streamlined experience. It's building brand identity. It's developing that trust that you're jumped from one place to another and they're supposed to go together. And a lot of that goes a long way. That visual appeal makes a really big difference. So keep that in mind as you edit not only the content, but also the appearance. Once you have everything as you'd like it, you can save that template so you can use it again and again and again. I'm going to save as new. I'm going to call this satisfaction. I'm also going to spell it correctly, which is a good way to go, with some excitement. So save my template, and then I can use that to send out. As I'm sending, of course, if you have pre-populated, it's a really great way to, it's a really great idea to save that information in a list under Contact Manager. That would include anything like any pre-populated fields, any other attributes that you want to use in mail merge, lots of other pieces we're skipping here in sort of this high-level view, but in most cases you're going to be sending from a list and selecting that you do want to pre-populate. In that case, you're going to choose which option you want and be able to send from there. Today I'm just going to use type manually to show you an example of one. I'm going to send this to myself. And continue, and you see I have the opportunity to pre-populate. Of course, because I'm adding this manually, I can choose which department this person works in. Of course, I'm in Department 3. And then I'm going to continue on to sending and scheduling the invitation. Again, this comes back to an earlier point of timing. When is the best time to send out this survey? You know your organization, you know your employees, you know sort of their work schedule, their habits. In general, we don't think Monday is a really great time to send surveys. In general, we don't think Friday afternoons are a really great time either. The middle of the week, Tuesday to Thursday, late morning, early afternoon, these are the general sort of best practices. But once you get to know the sort of response rates and the participation of your employees, your colleagues, you'll be able to fine-tune that schedule a little bit more precisely. But for now, I'm just going to schedule mine for later. Keep in mind that this is not today. This is a few days from now. So if you want it to go out today, select today's date, and then choose the time that you'd like to send this out. So I'm going to send this out in the early afternoon, 1 o'clock. Notice that you can also automatically schedule reminders. So again, the same communication strategy, all of those high-level points coming in on the technical side, to making sure that you are nudging those people while the survey is still open. It's better to communicate with people while the survey is open rather than saying afterward, wow, I wish more people had responded. A lot of people struggle with response rates, but with some of those best practices in mind, they can make a huge difference. So I'm going to schedule my reminders later manually. So I'll just say schedule invitation, and I will send. And once I have that out, I'll be able to track my survey. I can distribute. There are a lot more things that I can do next from there. Of course, I'll be ready to move to reporting once I have some data coming in, but in this case, I don't really have a lot that's come in yet, so not a ton that I can do. So if I start with any survey that's in there, of course, you see I'm able to start with running my report right away. Do keep in mind, this is all part of the same platform. So once you've got your data in there, you're able to run report. Even if you just have one response, you can run a report. You can see what's coming in real time. So if there's something that you need to adjust, something that, a group that you need to communicate with more efficiently, or reach out and say, hey, we haven't heard from your department. There are a lot of different reports that are really good for that, like the response rate report, for example, or even the response trend report. So you can let people know, especially if there's someone else who's tasked you with doing the survey, you can let people know, hey, we are hearing responses. We are getting feedback back. Once that survey closes, of course, you're doing the reporting side of things. You're sharing out that feedback. Again, all of those, communicating all of those key takeaways and next steps so people know that there was a reason that you started this process in the first place, and that they know that their data is being valued. So very short, quick overview today of some high-level tips on successes in employee surveying, as well as some of the technical start to getting you in there quickly and getting your survey out. Not a rush, but something that can be done very efficiently, especially if you start with something from the survey bank, as we've seen. So I'd be happy to pause here for a few minutes if you've got any questions. We have a couple minutes left in our half hour together. And I will let you know that I will be sending you a recording of the session later today. So feel free to follow up with any questions that you have at that time, or to reach out to, of course, the resources that are in the platform. We have the user guide, we have a lot of videos, other webinars, of course. Up in the top right-hand corner of your screen, you're going to see those options right within the platform. Okay, seeing no questions then, again, feel free to follow up with me when I send you the recording a little bit later today. In the meantime, you can reach out to us, of course, through any type of social media. We're out there at SoGoSurvey. You can reach out to us through our website as well. And I am very happy to have you have joined us today. And I wish you all success in your next employee survey and beyond. Have a good day.